Hello everybody and welcome to another one of our 7-star Terror Raid build videos. Today we actually have an entirely new 7-star raid. I wasn't expecting it to be this soon after the Swampert that literally ended this past weekend. But we've got it. We've got here the 7-star Emboar is our next big 7-star raid. Emboar's original typing, of course, is Fire and Fighting, as famously hated by the Pokemon community. Its Terra type, which is a little interesting, is actually going to be Electric. I really was not expecting that for Emboar. I could have seen like Ground, Rock, or honestly even like Dark. But Electric's definitely a little bit unexpected. But you'll see why once we start getting into his moves and such. But of course, Emboar's abilities are Blaze, which is the traditional Fire type ability for any Fire type starter Pokemon, and Reckless, which comes into play when we get to his moves. Very large, especially with that Terra type. Speaking of moves, let's get over to them now. Wild Charge is definitely the big deal maker here, I guess. Terra type, of course, is Electric, and paired with that Reckless ability, Wild Charge is going to be doing a lot of damage. Reckless makes it so moves that do recoil do 20% more damage, which is quite a bit when you can consider that they already have such a high base power. Recoil is also calculated a little weird in Terra Raid, so Emboar is really not going to be doing that much damage to itself. And we've also got Flare Blitz as another great recoil-based move that'll get that Reckless boost and that stab boost from its Fire typing and its original typing. Head Smash is also a very good recoil move. That's actually a rock type move, so this guy's got pretty good coverage. And Close Combat to get that fighting type coverage as well on this Emboar. Of course, Close Combat doesn't have recoil, but Emboar doesn't learn any fighting recoil moves, and I think there's only like one or two. But Emboar doesn't get them, so Close Combat's probably what I'm expecting to see there. I could see it going for a Close Combat early on, and then clearing stat changes so that it gets a free Close Combat off. It also gets Heavy Slam, which is a pretty good steal move. Don't really know what that'd be great against, just some lighter Pokemon, I guess, but most of our sets are pretty heavy, and if not, they resist that, so it's all right. It's got Body Press on there as well. I don't know if it'd really use Body Press, considering that Close Combat does so much more damage, and Body Press uses the defense stat, and Emboar's defense isn't actually that great. Its special defense isn't either for the record, but it also gets Stone Edge and Earthquake, which are pretty good coverage options. It's also worth mentioning it gets Poison Jab and Zen Headbutt. Also, great coverage options. It gets it gets a very varied move pool. And Trailblaze is a very big one on there. There's a few of our sets that actually won't work super well if it gets Trailblaze. I'm not super expecting to see it, which is why it's only in like the little honorable mentions category down there at the bottom. But in case it does have that, a few of these sets, and I'll mention which ones they are, won't work as well. So I'd recommend maybe keeping away from them. But if it doesn't have Trailblaze, all the sets should work perfectly fine. And the ones that are actually weak to Trailblaze should probably do even better. So fingers crossed it doesn't have that. This Pokemon will be in 7-star Terra raids from June 14th to June 16th, and then once again from June 21st to June 23rd. Let's get on over to our sets that we built, though. Our first one here we've got is a Swampert. You'll recognize the first three of these sets actually from the Swampert 7-star Terra raid. They actually crossed over really well and make it so what's it called? We can literally just reuse the Pokemon. They have very similar weaknesses and resistances and such in a way that we can really just use the builds that we already have. So if you have any of these first three Pokemon that we'll get to, if you built them for the 7-star Swampert raid, they should work all right here. This Swampert, of course, is one of the Pokemon that won't do super well if it has Trailblaze. Again, I'm not super expecting to see it, but it might, so keep that in mind. The Swampert won't do super well if it does have that move. Swampert, of course, is the Water and Ground typing. You're going to want Terra-type Ground, and the Held item is going to be the Shell Bell. This is literally the exact same Swampert as in the 7-star Swampert build video, so if you have that already, just go for it. When it comes to its moves, you're going to want Earth Power as its main damage dealing move. Screech is a pretty good option if you've noticed that a lot of your team are physical attackers, because, you might as well give them that little boost if you notice they're starting to kind of snowball and deal a lot of damage. Mudslap and Chilling Water are great ways to get to your Terra, because they both debuff Emboar. Mudslap nuking his accuracy, and Chilling Water lowering his attack, which is very nice since Emboar is most likely going to use his physical attack stat. It is worth noting, Emboar does have a decent special attack stat, but it is 20 points lower than his attack stat, so I'm definitely expecting to see its attack used. If it was going to use his special attack, it does get access to the move Scald, which could make things a little interesting when it comes to our physical attackers later, but realistically we should be fine. I'm not expecting it to run special, and I'd be pretty surprised if it ran Scald, if I'm being completely honest. When it comes to EVs, you're going to want to put 252 points in HP, 252 points in a special attack, and then put the last little bit into defense, and its nature is going to be Modest, which is up special attack and minus attack. The ability is just going to be Torrent, Damp, as its other ability doesn't do anything here, and again, Terra-type Ground is pretty important for this Pokemon. When it comes to IVs, everything matters except attack. You don't care what attack is. But let's get on to our next set. We've got another repeat. We've got Rotom Wash here, Electric and Water type, and you'll notice that Terra type is Psychic. Again, that's a little different, just like last time, but we'll get to why that is in just a second. Leftovers are a pretty good hold item for this Pokemon. And we get to his moves. You'll see why we're running the Terra-type Psychic there. We've got Nasty Plot is a great way to get your special attack up early on. Reflect and Will-O-Wisp will help you take a lot more, you and your team take a lot more hits from this Emboar. Obviously, Reflect makes it so you take less physical damage, and Will-O-Wisp will actually work against Emboar because it'll technically be the electric type instead of the fire type. So you can definitely go for one or two of those. Don't go for two if it's already burned. I shouldn't have said that. Go for a Will-O-Wisp if it's not burned and its Terra Shield's not up, and you might as well burn it. Reflect is obviously pretty important to keep your team alive. And Sword Power is going to be this Pokemon's main damage dealing move. Once you get Nasty Plot 3 times and you're not taking a whole lot of damage, that Sword Power is going to start doing some ridiculous damage against this Pokemon, especially if you can get a few attack cheers up. When it comes to its stats, you're going to max out HP, max out special attack, put the last little bit into defense. Rotom Wash already has pretty good physical defense, so you don't really have to invest a whole lot to make sure it stays around. Its only ability is Levitate, so definitely run that. And it's going to be Modest Nature, which again is up special attack, minus attack. And when it comes to IVs, once again, everything matters except attack. You don't care what that value is. Moving to our next Pokemon, our last repeat, we've got Quagsire here. Quagsire, the Water and Ground type. We're going to run Terra-type Ground on it and give it the Shell Bell held item. When it comes to moves, you want Earth Power. It's going to be its main damage output. Chilling Water, Acid Spray, and Mud Slap are all great ways to get to your Terra. This Quagsire is mostly focused on making sure your team can deal damage and take a few hits. That's really the point of this Quagsire. I forgot to mention when it comes to abilities, this Quagsire is definitely, you got a few choices. Water Absorb's a pretty alright option, especially since this Emboar has a very slight possibility to run Scald. Quagsire's other ability, though, Unaware, makes it so it doesn't pay attention to damage boost when it's dealing or taking damage, which could be useful against the Emboar if it's stat boosting. I don't really expect it to be, but it might play out there. So realistically, the abilities probably don't matter too much on this Pokemon. Water Absorb and Unaware don't really do a whole lot in this fight, I assume at least. So you can, choose whichever you prefer. I honestly prefer Water Absorb because it'd be nice to get a little bit of extra healing out of a Scald or two, just in case it's running Scald. Realistically, I'd probably say Unaware is probably the better option here, but the Quagsire that we built last 7-star raid was Water Absorb, so I thought I'd just keep it, I think Water, it's really tough what I'd say. I think Water Absorb is slightly more important, because then you could heal as opposed to just not dealing or taking as much damage, but the whole point of this Quagsire is to limit the damage that it's taking, not to limit the damage that the Emboar is dealing. So you don't really care about your damage output, which is why I don't really care if it boosts its damage because all I'm using Chilling Water for is to lower its attack stat and such. So personally, I think Water Absorb might be a little better, but it's really up to you. When it comes to EVs, you're going to max out HP. I put 168 points into special attack and 88 into defense. This should give Quagsire a tiny bit of bulk to let it live a hit or two. Again, Water Absorb is its ability. Its nature is going to be Modest, which is, again, up special attack and minus attack. And when it comes to IVs, everything matters except your attack stat. You don't care what that value is. I don't know if I mentioned, but this is the Shell Bell held item too, and Terra-type Ground, I believe. Yeah, I think I mentioned the held item for the other two Pokemon. Okay, but getting on to our next Pokemon, this is a new build, I should say. We've got Garchomp here, which is a very fun one. I'm kind of looking forward to using this Garchomp. I think it'll work well. You got Dragon and Ground as its main typing, and Terra-type Ground, so you're going to want to run on this Pokemon. You're going to give it the Shell Bell held item, and we get over to its moves. We're going to run Breaking Swipe is your way to get to Terra with this Pokemon. Using Breaking Swipe can make it so Emboar's not dealing as much damage, as well as building up your Terra because it does damage as well. Earthquake is going to be your main damage output once you get to that Terra. And in case you, for whatever reason, need to have Speed the Emboar, if you notice you're not, or your teammate's not, and you need to, you got Bulldoze on there if you want. That also builds Terra. Dragon Cheer is also a great option because 2 of these 6 Pokemon that I have for you today are Dragon types. And if your team is running them, you press that Dragon, even if they're not running them, you press Dragon Cheer and everyone gets a +1 critical hit ratio. But if your team's full Dragon, you get +2, which is basically guaranteed crit, honestly. So I'd honestly press Dragon Cheer if you notice more than... I'd say if you notice at least 2 Garchomp, including you. So if one other person is running a Garchomp or other Dragon Pokemon, press that Dragon Cheer and you'll probably see a big payoff there. When it comes to stats, you're going to max out HP, put 252 points into that. You're going to want to give it 168 points into attack to give it a nice hitting power, and 88 in defense to let it stick around a little more. Rough Skin's a pretty good ability on this Pokemon. It'll make it so Emboar does a little bit of chip damage to itself every time it hits you with a move that makes contact, which is very nice. When it comes to nature, you want this thing to be adamant, which is up attack minus special attack. And when it comes to IVs, everything matters except special attack. Moving on to our next Pokemon, the other Dragon type I mentioned, we got Dragonite here. Dragonite is a Dragon and Flying Pokemon. You're going to want to run Terra Ground on this Pokemon and give it the Shell Bell held item as well. When it comes to moves, this is a little bit of a fun moveset. You got Rain Dance here. The only reason to really use that is if you notice that a lot of your team's taking a lot of damage from those Flare Blitz or other fire moves Emboar's throwing out. You can press Rain Dance to make it so they deal a lot less damage. You got Breaking Swipe on here, and Dragon Cheer for the same reasons you do on Garchomp, as well as Earthquake. They're pretty, similar Pokemon. It really comes down to what you want to use. I'd say Dragonite is probably better if you have like a worser team, like a worse team that you don't really maybe have communications with, because that ability multi-scale makes it so Dragonite can live a hit or two. And you'll be healing with that Shell Bell held item as well, and making so Emboar's doing less damage with Breaking Swipe. So Dragonite can probably stick around a little longer, but if you've noticed that your team is good at supporting you, Garchomp might be a better option. Multi-scale, once again, is its ability, which makes it take a lot less damage when the HP is full. If you use Breaking Swipe or Rain Dance or something, and you're able to make it so Emboar's not doing a lot of damage, and you're able to heal it back with Shell Bell, you can get multi-scale like an infinite amount of times, which is pretty cool. When it comes to stats, you're going to max out HP, put 188 points into attack and 68 into defense, so a little bit different than the Garchomp. Again, Terra-type ground on this Pokemon. You want it to be adamant as well, just like the Garchomp. And when it comes to nature, I already mentioned it's adamant, which is up attack minus special attack. And when it comes to IVs, you're going to make sure everything matters except special attack. That value doesn't matter since you're not using it. Finally, moving on to our last build. This one is a bit of a fun one. I'm very curious to see if this works, because if it does, I think it'll work pretty well. But it is definitely hit or miss. We've got Mudsdale here. Mudsdale is a very interesting Pokemon. It's got the ground type as its original typing. It's going to be Terra-type fighting, which you might ask why, but you'll see why in just a second. You're going to give it the Shell Bell held item. Moving to its moves, you've got Iron Defense, Earthquake, Rock Smash, and Body Press. You could probably already tell what we're going for here. This Pokemon is focused on building its defensive stats. That Body Press does a whole lot of damage. And you can do that by either pressing Iron Defense for like early on in the fight, so you take less damage, or pressing Rock Smash to get your Terra, and just relying on the Emboar, to build up your defense stat with that stamina ability. That's Mudsdale's like signature ability, I'd say. Mudsdale already has an incredible defense stat, so you don't have to, really worry about you dying. We invested quite a bit in defense still just to make sure, but using that stamina boost as well as that Iron Defense, that Body Press can be doing a lot of damage. And if you can get a Rock Smash or two off, they only have a 50% chance to lower the opponent's defense. But if you can get one or two off, you probably have a decent chance of lowering it. But realistically, your goal as the Mudsdale is to just press Iron Defense enough, probably 2 times, I'd say, and then hopefully the Emboar will hit you twice to boost your stamina, and then you can start pressing Body Presses, doing a ridiculous amount of damage. You're obviously going to be taking less damage for every Iron Defense and stamina boost you get too, so you should definitely be able to live at least a hit or two. When it comes to stats, you want to max out HP, put 44 points into attack just so that those Rock Smashes and Earthquakes do a little bit of damage in case you need it, and then put 212 into defense. When it comes to its nature, you want this thing to be Impish, which is up defense minus special attack, and again, stamina as its ability is very, very important. When it comes to IVs, everything matters except special attack, so keep that in mind. With that being said, that's the last one of our builds here for you guys here today. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. All of these builds should work pretty well. Mudsdale, Quagsire, and Swampert will work slightly less well if it has Trailblaze. Mudsdale should probably still be fine, but Quagsire and Swampert I'd probably stay away from in case the Emboar has a grass move like Trailblaze. So just keep that in mind when you're building these sets, or when that Emboar comes out and you're ready to build a set for it. I'm going to call it here, though, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to see you guys out there in the 7-star Emboar Terra raids. I'm very much looking forward to it. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good day.